This is on streamlining sales and customer engagement, so sort of what happens after the last panel, after you've started the outreach and acquisition process, and then how you manage all of that complexity after that point. So I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves and jump right into a bit about what kind of software programs they use that they created in-house, because everyone on this panel did some internal work on that, and then if there's any other programs they want to highlight that they use to help confront some of the bottlenecks they face on the complex process after the initial lead gen has begun. So we'll start with Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie DeWitt, Director of Product Management at SolarCity. I oversee all the product development and rollouts of our software that sales reps and customers touch, from lead entry all the way to install and PTO. So a lot of the challenges that have already been highlighted today, we've been trying to address with software. We build most of our software internally. We do also work with Salesforce and have piloted some small projects with Utility API. But I would say my focus right now is on streamlining the customer experience. As has been mentioned, there are so many touch points throughout the customer journey. I find a big challenge with kind of looking at best practices and analogs in other industries that the solar sale happens actually quite early in the customer journey, and there's a long time potentially between when a customer first signs a contract and gets excited about going solar and when they are actually have solar being generated on their roof and become a paying customer. And so how do we shorten that time period? How do we better manage expectations throughout that journey? There's pieces of it that we can control, and then there's lots of pieces that we can't with permitting and interconnection. I have heard it said before, it's not our fault, but it's our problem. So we still have to own that experience and make sure customers are happy and engaged to kind of plug the holes through PTO.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric Reinhardt. I'm Director of Product Management at Sunrun. So I own the process on software end from lead creation all the way to deal submission. So we use a bunch of softwares in between that process. Also at Sunrun, we have a kind of a unique model in that we sell direct, and we also sell through a variety of partners who sell in a variety of different ways. So, we knock on doors, we sell in retail locations, we call on the phone. We do a variety of things, and software has to support that process as we capture leads in all those ways and then funnel them through our sales force. So, we use a CRM to do that. We use mobile tools in the field to capture those leads. We use telephony software to call those leads. We have scheduling software to make sure the right people are at the right appointments. And then, of course, we have our design and pricing tools to make sure that we can quote in minutes. So all of that, what I'm really concerned with all of that, it's all complex, is about trying to standardize that experience for the customer. So whether they enter in, at a Costco or whether someone knocks on their door, they have to go through that process in a similar fashion and have a great experience regardless of where they began. So.
I'm Josh Powell, CEO of Revolusun. We're kind of the small guy here, about 5,000 customers. Started in 2009 and started in the movement away from Excel-based tools to estimate, to developing software to create a streamlined customer access process for proposals and deal flow. And through that, we developed back-of-house software, and I think now at this stage we're mostly looking at APIs and how to take best-in-class software from other industries and integrate it into our resources and just keep our company growing.
So maybe to pick up from the last panel, how are you making it easier for the customers? They have all this complexity on the back end. What are you doing to make it seamless to them after that first point of contact? What software programs are helping you along the way? Do you want to start with us, Katie?
Sure. So there's a lot of things we need from the customer at different points in the onboarding process. We need them to give us their utility information, which can be easy if if they already have an online account and that utility works with utility API, or we can get the data directly from Green Button, but often the customer has never gotten a bill online. And so even like helping them sign up and go through that process can be painful. So we focused on kind of automating that and letting the customer do it on their own time, as well as enabling a sales rep to help them with it. We need them to run credit if they're going to be requesting financing through us. So that's another thing. Like, we've tried to address a few things that we kind of demand from customer along the way that they can do on their own time, or a sales rep can help them through. After signing their contract, scheduling their site survey, that used to be something that sales rep, the customer, and our site survey scheduling team would have to get on a three-way call, find a time that works for everyone. Now the customer can pull up our scheduling app and see what's available and pick a time that works and sign up. So I think kind of as we're developing tools, we're trying to kind of simplify them and make them low touch for the customer who doesn't want to interact with us or someone at Solar City at every point and can do it themselves, but also make it easy enough for a sales rep or someone else in-house at Solar City to help them through it, so it doesn't feel like they're like talking to all these different people who are following different processes, as Eric said, just like standardizing the customer experience no matter who they talk to and what channel they come in from.
How did you develop the app, and what went into that?
The site survey scheduling app?
Yeah.
So it's really helpful. So it's based on where our warehouses are, and so we have an algorithm that determines how long it's going to take us to get to different houses within a certain radius of our warehouses. And we can also now kind of favor and highlight in our site survey scheduling app the ones that are good for us. Like, we know we're going to be at a house nearby, so we'll recommend a time slot. So we make it kind of easy for the customer to have visibility into all the options, and also to point out kind of when they can most predictably get a site survey the fastest.
And that was all done in-house?
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked a lot about quotes when we chatted earlier and trying to make that process faster. How are you going about that?
Well, a variety of different ways. I mean, one is we are trying to evaluate whether their home is good for solar as fast as possible, and try to give them some sort of information to let them know that they're qualified and that they can save money. And if we get to that point quickly, we kick off the process behind the scenes. So instead of asking a customer, are you ready for a quote? Do you want to see what solar looks like on your roof? Once they've reached a certain point in our software, we just immediately start designing and start quoting, so that we can deliver them as soon as they're ready to see it, then they can see it. And that's really how we help kind of standardize the sales process. If they're standing in a Costco, or whether they're on the phone at work, doing a consultation with us over the phone, we've already had the system working, trying to basically preempt their questions. We're also pinging a variety of different sources to get information about them, so they don't have to provide it, right? Whether that's credit or home attributes or the square footage of the home, et cetera. We're trying to collect all that data automatically, so that the system's getting all the information it needs without having to wait for the customer to provide that input.
And do any of you guys use Project Sunroof?
Currently, no, not yet.
I was curious, I had to ask.
Certainly excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Josh? I mean, on the customer part in Hawaii, obviously there's been some delays and there's been a net metering regulatory change. Could you lose customers along the way? I'm sure you could. I mean, how are you staving that off?
I think one of our themes, and this kind of goes back to the original, what drove companies to do this, is mostly transparency, and that's where software really facilitates the process. I mean, I look at it, from a sales perspective, it's an essential tool to help an effective salesperson control the process. And so for customers in our specific situation, where you have elongated timelines, you're moving down into the experience part beyond the sale, and you need to give them as much information as possible. For us, it's also enhanced our ability to add other products to the experience, hooks, if you will, things that help us retain the customer while they're waiting. A lot of that stuff's being demonstrated today, but simple tools that give them more information about who they are, how they use energy, what their likely savings is going to be. And
I think, Katie, your mom had an experience going solar. How'd that go?
She did. I got to shadow the customer experience firsthand recently when my mom was going solar in LA. And she's in DWP, and they have really long PTO timelines right now. So she was told when she was scheduling her installation that although her panels would get installed on this date, it would probably be about 6 weeks before they'd actually start producing electricity. And we wouldn't bill her until then, but she was very disappointed. It's like there's this moment of excitement when you have these shiny new panels on your roof and you're feeling really good and all your neighbors ask what's going on, and then it kind of lulls if you don't actually get to see them producing energy. So her user feedback was, we need to manage that expectation upstream, and we can do that. We should know, especially with the bigger companies where we're doing a lot of installations across the country, we should know where the PTO timelines are kind of backed up, and as much as possible anticipate that and create engaging content, emails, and messaging for customers to make sure that they stay hooked and are expecting the delay.
To what extent, or go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that, part of it is managing expectations with the customer about what's going to happen, but also it's managing the complexity of solar with the customer. So, we all know, the rate schedules change all the time. There's hundreds of utilities we're dealing with. There's different rebates and different AHJs. There's different equipment. There's different inverters. And, we have to be really careful about what we give to the customer, because all we're doing is give them more information to think about, right? So if you start talking about the inverter and talk about how it works with the panels, or start explaining to this, they're just going to go on Google and start searching and try to think about, like, do I really need to do this? Do I need to compare? Who do I need to talk to think this through? So part of software too is not just giving them expectations about what's going to happen, but also giving them the right information that helps them make the decision without giving them so much information that they're paralyzed. So that's a fine line to walk in solar, and one, I think over the course of the last few years, we've actually been pulling more and more information back to make it more simple for the customer and more simple for our sales reps.
Do you have anything to add?
Just a good launch from Eric's point. I think, the decision point's critical for us, and there's a couple celebratory points, but the decision point to go forward with a lease or a purchase or whatever, it's a big decision for most people. It involves disruption in their home, and it's pretty complicated. It's one of the more complicated things most people will go through. And our industry's evolved, certainly the residential, most all aspects of it have evolved around a sales interaction with another human being. And there's a lot of discussion in the back rooms of software development and solar and everything else, that maybe, people can make those decisions without it. And I'll just come down on, my opinion's pretty strong here. I think it's a big enough deal for most customers that it's actually going to involve an enabler somewhere, and that's usually a salesperson. So I think the tools have to be, particularly in the sales process, have to be carefully focused on how the sales process works, and they have to be simple enough to enable effective salespeople to help consumers make decisions. And sometimes we get lost in the engineering, and you're just alluding to that. Like, you can just, data overload, and any consumer can do that. They have access to it, and there's nothing, we don't want to inhibit that. But you want to be able to take action when they're ready to make decisions, and that's what good salespeople do. And so your tool can't be like, spinning a wheel trying to calculate a rooftop when they're ready to make a decision. Otherwise, that 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute delay, they get up from the kitchen counter and jump in the fridge. It's over.
I want to get back to Eric's point on regulatory issues, but first, to pick up on that, do you see the process going entirely online? More sophisticated tools come out? Will there be an Amazon for solar? I think we have some different opinions on that, so who wants to kick it off?
I hope so. To drive down acquisition costs, a big opportunity is to handle more of the top of the funnel online. That's one reason. The other reason is, and we talked about this a bit earlier, with younger people who are used to buying more things online, becoming homeowners, we want to make sure that that segment is not ignored because they don't have a way to go solar without talking to a sales rep. So I think both from the kind of market opportunity and cost perspective, we need to figure out how to sell solar online. And I think a lot of what the previous panel talked about is we need an educated enough consumer base for them to be able to confidently make those decisions. Right. And then a big challenge that I think Project Sunroof is going to help address is how do you provide an accurate estimate or enough accurate information up front for someone to be willing to commit to a 20-year contract.
Yeah, and I think people often say, they compare it to buying a car because, it's the same value. A car can be 30 to 40 grand, solar can be in that area. I think actually a better correlation can be, choosing a cable provider. I mean, you're not really thinking about whether DirecTV is going to put a satellite on your roof. It doesn't really bother you that much. You're more concerned with the content that's coming out of the box and the price for it. So I don't think we're there yet, but I think that is a realistic correlation to say that we're going to make it simple enough that people will know what it's like, and we're going to make the programming and life cycle of it to that customer online a compelling and enriching experience enough that they're going to feel comfortable making that choice.
Josh, I think, you were saying before, it really comes down to sort of, there is a human element there, a good salesperson who's ready to close the deal, especially in Hawaii, where it's very interpersonal. There's a lot of community-oriented development.
We see our future in the sort of long run of the system life. And we probably all see it that way. But customer acquisition is really important, but retention is probably the most important thing to us at this point. How we build on our relationship with them. So the information systems are critical to your team to be able to support that relationship. But it's not, it's beyond an O&M relationship. It's what else can I do? So in my world, solar's an entry. It's a long-term relationship with the consumer, but there's a bunch of peripheral stuff that we're going to do. And we've heard a little bit of that earlier today, but that's, to me, I don't see how that shifts away from, definitely our web presence, our online tools are critical for the sort of environment we create for a customer, but we've done things like build showrooms, have events for customers, things that bring them together because there's a community there, and that requires person-to-person interaction.
Right. So going back to the regulatory piece, because that is potentially one of the biggest bottlenecks here. I cover a lot of the regulatory changes, and it is so hard to keep up, let alone when you're trying to give an accurate quote, I can imagine, and potentially even getting blowback saying that you didn't give an accurate enough quote, and now customers have been misled. So in that part of the puzzle, how are you guys dealing with it? What would you like to see done internally or from other software developers to ease some of the pain point?
Well, I think, AHJs and homeowners associations are just a complexity nightmare for solar companies. Just even the fire setbacks in design are different in almost every AHJ. So, we want to automate the permitting process, and we think we have line of sight into doing that. But to do that, we need to know what the AHJ rules are across the country. So, I think that's where we're looking for, where potentially there's places to help us is to figure out how to reduce that complexity so that we know, people like GenAbility are helping on the rate schedule end, but what about on the AHJ schedule end or the AHJ rules or the homeowner association end?
Are there any other products out there that are working, or is there something you'd like to see?
I don't know of anyone who has those rules in a software system that we can ingest and then use to create automatic permit sets, but that's a huge step forward if we can do that.
And Katie, you were mentioning even knowing down to hourly usage
Yeah, so similarly on the customer consumption side, we don't want to overcomplicate it for the customer, and we really don't want to ask a sales rep to have to write down or manually enter 12 months of hourly consumption data. But with NEM 2.0 and more solar customers moving to time of use pricing, the only way that we can accurately model savings is with some accuracy. We can't predict if their consumption patterns last year are going to match next year's, but even take a baseline to model their savings, we need that level of detailed consumption data to do a design that's going to maximize their savings or offset and to reflect how much they're going to save in year one and based on assumptions about how they think utility rates are going to change. So I think, as I mentioned, and they talked about in the fireside chat, utility API is, I think, the player in that space right now that I'm excited about. And if we can make it as simple for the customer to just give us access to, or give utility API access to their account, and then we get this really clean data set with our 12 months of hourly data, and it shows up in a savings calculation, that would be awesome. And I think there's still some integration pieces we have to figure out to make that happen.
Yeah. One question I want to throw to you before putting it to the audience is, what are some of the lessons you can learn from other industries? Katie, you had mentioned this when we chat earlier. In the entire process we've sort of touched on here, what are some other industry lessons learned?
Yeah, I brought this up as something I'm interested to hear people's opinion about, because I think I know I'm guilty of this, that I think solar is so complicated and the customer journey and the challenges are so specific that it's really hard to take an analog and learn from it. I think Jake pointed out this morning, there are these other industries, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, insurance. We look at TurboTax a lot. It's a kind of dry, not sexy process with a lot of steps to go through paying your taxes, and you get walked through it in a pretty simple, intuitive way. And I think something really important that we've tried to emulate is TurboTax does a really good job of orienting you in where you've been and what you have left to do. Similarly, we always want to make sure the customer knows where they are in their customer journey. I think Eric mentioned there's this kind of time between contract signing or site survey and install where the customer might just get lost, and are they waiting on me or am I waiting on them? Is it the utility? So we want to make sure they're super clear on where they are and that we're doing everything we can to move their job along. So I think there are some other industries that have done that well online that we can learn from.
I think too, the personal banking, the financial tools, being able to show a customer on their phone, what their IRA is doing and, what their savings account is doing and their monthly spend. I mean, all that information was really hard to digest from the average American, but now they can look on their phone and understand their financial picture a lot easier. And I think that's what we're trying to get to with customer websites, is trying to give them that information of production and usage and home attributes that kind of give them a quick snapshot that this is what my energy life is like, and I feel like it's in control, and I feel like I'm saving money. And that's what we're really trying to convey to them.
Okay. Any questions? It's Eric Westhoff's fault that we're late, by the way, so he's not my boss or anything. Yes, please. Oh, actually, excuse me, I think we have a microphone in the back, and then we'll go over to you second. So maybe we go with the mic first.
All right. So you guys mentioned a lot about simplifying the customer experience, and I'm wondering, what is the right balance of information, or another way to think about it is, what do you wish your customers knew about before they talk to you about going solar?
I'll jump in. I mean, the education piece is really tough because, the country, if you're looking at the whole of the United States, you've got a lot of regions in very different places in terms of consumer education. We have a franchise in Massachusetts, and they're probably 3 years different from us in terms of consumer education. Hawaii, you could talk to 95 out of 100 people, and they tell you solar is a good idea. Massachusetts, it's going to be almost the exact opposite of that. They don't, a bunch of people don't know, and only a few people are true believers. So the baseline education is critical, and that's probably where, like Google getting into this space and helping to drive just the baseline, hey, this is credible, it's okay. And that's, that's a scale where that can happen uniformly with a lot of people in the country. And then, tools that help them sort of quickly process value and credibly process value. I think third parties that aren't engaged in the selling process, delivering that is important to consumers and making those things really widely available.
Yeah, I think it's just the social proof of it. I don't think anyone in America knows that 1 million people have gone solar. I mean, I don't think we've had
My
one
friends.
customer call up and be like,
Your friends.
I heard you guys, 1 million have gone solar. I want to be 1,000,001. No one's ever done that. And that and the zero down option, the lease. I mean, no one. I still have family members who still ask me, how does this work? I'm like, you just don't put anything down and you pay less than the utility. That's it. That's all you need to know. And it's still, no one understands that. So that education piece, those two things would really speed up the process.
And then just specifically once they're actually in the funnel, I think some of the misconceptions that we have to address. One, when the grid goes down, your solar panels will not function. And you will continue to get a bill from your utility and from Solar City. Super important things to understand so that the customers aren't really disappointed down the line. So even sometimes those questions don't come up, but we now are trying to proactively address that and message that so that the customer's expectations are accurately set.
I actually wrote a story about the 1 million rooftops, but I guess no one read it.
Hey, we did.
Yeah, you guys did. No, but I talked to a customer who talked about the architectural review board in their town in Missouri. It was the one thing that almost turned the whole thing off. They just happened to be really pro-solar and went all the way to the nth degree, and eventually they said, okay, actually you can only see a portion of the panel from one side of the road, so go forward with it. But it was just such a specific thing in that one town that could have lost that one customer and everyone in the neighborhood from even thinking about solar. So,
Right.
But sorry, I have a question over here.
Hi, Tor Valenza from Impress Labs. At what point in the customer journey are you guys most losing customers, and how can software be improved to fix that, or I guess created for that one pain point for you guys?
I think I've got the worst pain. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got, average probably 8 to 14 month utility delays in Hawaii. So, and we're kind of through probably the worst of it now. But I mean, that's, clearly that kind of wait period, that's devastating for customers. And you're no matter what in a reselling process, once those customers get through an approval process, so you're investing, you can go ahead and just double your acquisition costs basically for retention. And that's painful. And obviously, nationally we want to avoid that. We want to do stuff about it to not be there. But, elongated back end is terrible. You want to move quickly through the process and remove your obstacles. That's why we all want that 150 to be 7. We want to move quickly.
I think it is from lead qual to appointment set or consultation, if you want to call it that. I think that we find customers, we talk to customers, we tell them about solar, they get excited, we schedule an appointment, and if that appointment doesn't happen fast enough, or we haven't given them numbers fast enough, then they go back to their lives and they forget about it. And when we keep calling them back to reschedule, they just have already moved on. That window is closed and they're no longer interested until maybe we catch them again when we knock on their door or when they come into Costco or something like that.
So is there software you think that can fix that?
Yeah, I mean, our present strategy is speed. That if we can characterize the leads and understand what they are as soon as possible, then we can get them to a rep as soon as possible, and then that rep can present numbers as soon as possible. And that's why it's kind of critical to figure out up front everything you possibly can about the home and the customer so that you can kick off the proposal generation process immediately. And then you can get the customer a quote in minutes, and they understand solar a lot faster, and then they don't have to go home and go back to their lives and forget about it. They're already on the hook. So.
Yeah, I think it's not as much like one stage as the time. There's such a strong correlation between the time between steps and fallout. So in places where we have over-the-counter permits, you see fewer cancellations because installation is just happening a lot more quickly. There's less time to worry, to change your mind, for something else in your life to get in the way. But yeah, I agree. One thing we're trying to do at the top of the funnel is, a smart routing where we're taking the lead and routing it to the nearest available rep with the highest close rate, so that we're trying to get the customers who are ready to talk to a great sales rep as soon as possible. And with what Nicole said in the previous panel, and to Eric's point also, just if there didn't have to be this wait period between you're interested, maybe you've done some research online, you're like ready to go, and then you wait and maybe you talk to someone at a dinner party that night who says solar's a bad idea, and we never hear from you again. So if we can engage you with great content and information as soon as you express interest, I think that would address a lot of the early stage fallout.
I think we'll have to leave it at that for now. Thank you so much to the panel, and have a good break.